Well, good morning, and thank you, Mike and Vince and the FIPA board for inviting me to speak with you here today. Welcome to you all. You know, last year when I was here, I joked I was here for a good time and not a long time. Well, it turns out I lied. As most of you know, my term was extended when the legislative committee that was tasked with appointing a permanent information and privacy commissioner were unable to reach a unanimous decision. It's written into our law that a permanent commissioner is appointed by a unanimous recommendation of an all-party committee. So that committee met 19 times and went through 2 competitions and were unable to come to an agreement. So I've been assured by the government that my current best before date, one of the other things in our legislation is that I'm an acting commissioner for 20 sitting days of the legislature. However, you're not maybe paying as much attention as I am, but Bill number 4, which was tabled in the legislature yesterday, is called the Acting Information and Privacy Commissioner Continuation Act. Or as we're calling it around the office, the Drew McArthur Continuation Act. So what it proposes to do is clear out that 20-day requirement for 20 sitting days of the legislature with a sunset clause of March 2018. So my expectation is that there will be a committee appointed and they will be diligent in their efforts to attract and appoint a permanent commissioner for this information summit next year. So I've been here for a good time and a long time, it appears. But it's been a privilege, it's been a learning opportunity, and contrary to what I tell my friends back at TELUS, this is the best job I've ever had. I'd like to talk to you today about some of the work of my office, beginning with our most recent reports. And we've been busy. We published an audit of mobile device use in the BC government, conducted our first private sector privacy audit, examined ICBC's information sharing agreements. But first, I want to tell you about our most recent report, which hopefully you heard about. We released it just yesterday. I did quite a few media interviews. It's the report on timeliness of the provincial government of responding to Freedom of Information access requests. And it's especially important with Right to Know Week just around the corner. So it also speaks directly to my mandate, which is to enforce the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. So the report is titled Timing is Everything, a report card on government's access to information responses. It's the name of the report. It examines timeliness of government's responses in responding to FOI requests. We compared and analyzed the results with previous timeliness reports from our office, from the most recent report in 2014, dating back to our first report published in 2009. The results are, well, not very encouraging. I'm pretty disappointed. I told the minister that. I told the government that. As many of you know, public bodies are required to respond to access requests within 30 days. This is 30 business days. When FIPA was first enacted, it was 30 calendar days. It's now 30 business days, so they get weekends to work on them too. But they can also ask for a time extension under limited circumstances. So those circumstances are if a public body needs more information in order to clarify a request, or if there is a large number of records that need to be searched and that may cause unreasonable impact on the operations of government, or if more time is needed to consult with a third party or another public body, or if they get consent from the applicant. But those should be the exceptions to the norm. So we should see pretty good compliance, given that those would be the exceptions. When we reviewed government's compliance with FIPA in responding to requests, we found that from 2013 to 2017, it was in contravention of the Act between 20 and 25% of the time. Just think about that. 1 in 4 to 1 in 5 access requests were not responded to in the time frame that the government set itself when they passed FIPA. So this is their own benchmark, 30 days to respond. Previous timeliness reports from my office also confirm the government routinely operates in convention of FIPA. That should be an extraordinary finding. However, it's happened over the last almost 10 years. When I was Chief Compliance Officer at TELUS, and we were required to comply with various pieces of legislation that we were subject to, 80% was not our goal. 100% compliance should be the goal, and it should be the benchmark. So my first and most important recommendation to government in our report was for them to do whatever it takes to come in compliance with the law. I'm also concerned about the significant increase in the government's time extension requests to my office. So they can take a time extension on their own volition of 30 days. But if that isn't enough, they can apply to my office for an increased time extension. And we review the circumstances under which they apply. And the number of time extension requests have increased over 75% from the previous year. My office plans to follow up with another timeliness report next year to see how they are doing and hopefully to find out that they are getting more ministries in 100% compliance with our Act. Okay, I'll calm down now. We released another report last week that was a little less stressful for us. It was an audit of ICBC's information sharing agreements. Why pick ICBC? Well, simple reason that it holds one of BC's most complete personal information data sets. Just think about it. They have personal information on virtually every adult in British Columbia. Driving information, vehicle ownership information, vehicle insurance information, contact information, physical description, picture of you, your height, your weight, color of your hair, color of your eyes, plus your driving history, any infractions, and any insurance claims. That's significant. There's a lot of information there, and if it got into the wrong hands, it can have some pretty serious consequences. And ICBC shares that information with many other organizations, from bailiff services and municipalities to parking lot operators and tow companies. So for the most part, we were happy to report that ICBC is fulfilling its duty under FIPA to protect the personal information of British Columbians. We identified some areas of potential risk, which thankfully ICBC says they are going to immediately address. We're also investigating TransLink in light of reports that the Transportation Authority was sharing Compass card information with law enforcement agencies without judicial oversight. Stay tuned for the results of that investigation. So working backwards in time now, stay with me, we released the results of our first ever audit of a private sector organization. This was a medical clinic in the Lower Mainland that had installed 8 video surveillance cameras throughout its building, including in the lobby, in fitness rooms, and in hallways. My audit concluded that this surveillance was unlawful. We used the report as an important opportunity to educate small business and the public about the use of video surveillance and that small businesses should only use that as a last resort after exploring other less privacy-invasive operations. And shortly after I spoke to you last year, we published an investigation into mobile device management by the BC government. Working together with the BC Auditor General's Office, Carol Bellringer's here today, who also released a report at the same time, we jointly published a useful guidance document about mobile device security. It's on our website. It's valuable for both organizations and individuals, and I encourage you to check out that guidance document. There's 15 tips in there on how to take the basic steps to help you protect the use of your mobile device. oipc.bc.ca. Another issue we've been dealing with involves a citizen vigilante organization known as the Surrey Creep Catcher. Here's what happened. 2 individuals complained to my office that Creep Catcher improperly collected, used, and disclosed their personal information. The organization had induced each individual to have online communication with a fictitious woman over the age of 18. Then they told the individuals that this decoy was under the age of 16 and arranged to meet them in a public location and confront each man for attempting to lure a minor. The organization recorded the encounter on video and then posted those videos on Facebook and YouTube. I found that the Surrey Creep Catchers' conduct violated PIPA and ordered them to stop collecting, using, and disclosing the complainant's personal information, to destroy all the personal information in its custody or under its control, and to ask others who disseminated the information to remove and destroy it as well. Well, Creepcatcher has petitioned the BC Supreme Court for a judicial review. The result of that is my order has been stayed. There's a few things that are unique about this situation. I can't recall another time where a privacy commissioner has confronted an organization with an order and that organization has refused to comply. In fact, they've publicly defied us. Maybe the first time ever that a privacy commissioner has been called an idiot in the press, among other things. That usually is reserved for my staff and my close personal friends. However, I digress. Oh, and there's another catching organization I'll talk about. We're investigating a chicken catching organization that ran afoul of the law. You might remember an incident reported in the media where chickens were being mistreated on some BC farms by a catching organization. The organization responded by implementing body-worn cameras to record audio and video of company employees. This was reported in the media, which immediately got my attention. And as I've noted in the past, there are very few times when continuous video surveillance of an employee would be authorized under BC's privacy laws. This investigation report will be published very soon and will provide some important considerations for any organization considering internal video surveillance. Now, briefly turning to the work in our office. My years on the OIPC External Advisory Board helped familiarize me with the environment and the strategic direction of the office. So in my first few weeks as acting commissioner, over 15 months ago, I was able to jump right into the job. The first thing I did was create a 90-day plan for the office, setting out some projects that I thought were very critical. One of those projects was to launch a public awareness survey, an idea that was initiated by my predecessor, Liz Denham, to help us understand how knowledgeable average citizens in BC are about BC's access to information and privacy laws and also their rights under PIPA. These and other questions form the basis of a comprehensive survey, the first of its kind ever conducted in BC. And we learned a lot. For instance, we learned that just under half of BC residents, 46%, are familiar with BC's access to information and privacy laws. But only 3% consider themselves to be very familiar with these laws. So all of those of you in the room must have answered this survey. You've also learned that while half of the BC residents surveyed had heard of the OIPC, 68% wished they knew more and were more informed about the work of our office. So these answers will help us guide our future outreach, and it's, of course, one of the reasons why I'm here today. We also recently completed an update of our strategic plan with critical input from staff and our external advisory board. We'll be publishing that plan on our website soon, so watch for that. In other areas, my staff continue to work closely with our federal and provincial counterparts over the past year. I was honored to join Canada's privacy commissioners to provide a unified stance on our national security framework. Jointly, we provided a submission to Public Safety Minister Ralph Goodale's Green Consultation paper, emphasizing, among other things, that we need proper oversight of the surveillance activities of our national security and law enforcement agencies. I believe that police and privacy commissioners need to respect one another's mandates, and I'm closely following Minister Goodale's bid to increase the ability of Canada Border Services to collect exit data, which got under recently in the House of Commons. As a reminder, if this bill were to be passed, Canada's Border Services Agency would have the authority to record the name, sex, date of birth, citizenship, nationality of any person who is leaving or who has left Canada, along with the date, time, and point of departure, and other details about travel documents that may have served of that as proof of identity. So we know that the Federal Privacy Commissioner, Daniel Terrien, will continue to provide advice and recommendations on the draft of this legislation, and we'll be watching that with great interest. My office is also working with the Federal Privacy Commissioner to determine how many British Columbians are affected by the massive Equifax privacy breach. This breach affected 143 million Americans and about 100,000 Canadians. In international matters, the OIPC is proud to continue its leadership role for the Asia-Pacific Privacy Authorities. That's 19 data protection authorities in 13 Asia-Pacific countries. And we're co-hosting the next forum here in Vancouver in November with the Office of the Privacy Commissioner Canada. The experiences gained from these international conferences offers great insights from member regulators, and we look forward to another great session with our international colleagues. Looking further afield now, we're inching closer and closer to the enforcement date for the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation, or the GDPR. This could affect BC public and private sector organizations. In May of 2018, that's not that far away, businesses and public bodies that process personal information of EU citizens will have to adjust their privacy practices or face some pretty severe consequences. As you may know, the stakes are high. For a serious contravention of the GDPR, 20 million euros, or up to 4% of annual global turnover. And if you think of the $74 billion in revenue Google gains each year, 4% of that is not insignificant. For lesser contraventions, up to 10 million euros, or 2% of annual worldwide turnover of the entire corporate group. So what do you need to know about GDPR? Well, there's 5 interesting elements that may sound familiar to you. First, enhanced consent. Consent must be clear, unambiguous. It can't be bundled, and it must be granular, and it must be as easily revoked as it is given. Data portability. The GDPR allows you to request a machine-readable copy of your personal information from an organization. The right to be forgotten. You can request that your information be deleted by an organization. So just think, those 2 things, the right to be forgotten and data portability, when taken together, you could go and ask for all your Fitbit medical device or all the tracking information on your Fitbit, take that in machine-readable form, and provide that to another company in order to establish service with them. Imagine the level of ownership that gives EU citizens over their personal information. We're also included in the GDPR is the right to object to an automated decision. That means that if they use an algorithm to make a decision about personal information, you can demand that a human intervene and that decision is made by a human. And the last one, mandatory breach notification. The GDPR is all about accountability, and it's going to be a real game changer in terms of global privacy principles, and legislators are going to have to look at it very seriously as well. BC will need to react, and it's our hope with the new government in Victoria that some of our recommendations and improvements to FIPA and to PIPA will be undertaken in the coming months. In fact, I met with Minister Ginny Sims on Monday to discuss our key legislative priorities. So what's next for the OIPC? Well, we're currently at work on an audit of WorkSafe BC's access to information and privacy management program policies, as well as their responses to requests for information and complaints. We're also in the middle of an investigation into the over-collection of personal information by landlords after receiving several calls each week from individuals who've been asked by potential landlords for way too much personal information. This is an important investigation, as renters may be reluctant to assert their privacy rights at the risk of losing the opportunity to rent a house or an apartment. And we've recently launched an investigation into government compliance with Section 71 of FIPA, which, for those of you who don't have the Act memorized like my staff do, requires the head of a public body to create categories of records that are available without request. And this is a requirement in PIPA that says, or sorry, in FIPA, that they must create categories of records that are available without request. So we're taking all the responses from the ministries across the government and a number of public bodies to determine which categories of records and verify that they are in fact available, promoting more open and transparent government. And finally, I'm pleased to announce today, so you guys are lucky, first time I've announced, we're conducting an investigation into the collection, use, and disclosure of personal information by political parties in BC. We'll be looking into whether the BC Liberal Party, the New Democrat Party, and the Greens are in compliance with PIPA based on the vast amounts of personal information each party receives during the election process. My office has received numerous complaints about this issue, as well as noted several privacy breaches. That sounds like a lot of work to get done before I expire. Well, it's been my pleasure to speak with you this morning, and also to have served as BC's Acting Information and Privacy Commissioner for the last 15 months and likely for the next 3 to 6. I wish you a very good conference. I hope to have a chance to speak with you throughout the day. If you have time for questions, I'm more than happy to take them.